and I'm about to start the broadcast, okay?
All right, welcome everybody. A couple of quick things. You joined this webinar in a listen-only mode, which means that you're muted. Our trainings will be about 15 minutes each, including a short Q&A at the end and a webinar survey at the end of the program. Please participate by using the questions pane that you see on your screen, and we will address those questions at the end of the webinar during the Q&A. The post-webinar survey will appear on your screen when you exit this webinar. So welcome everybody. We're very excited to have you here. We're expecting to have close to 100 people, maybe a little bit over 100 people at this webinar. So every webinar we're doing, we're increasing the number of attendees, which is dynamite. We appreciate that you spent you're giving us a half hour or so of your time. And today's webinar is actually the HySecurity NICE Academy, where we're working with you to build industry professionalism one webinar at a time. Today's webinar is Learn the Secrets of the Smart Touch and Smart DC Controllers. Our objective today is to show you how easy it is to exploit the power on every STC and SDC control board. We'll do that by showing you a couple of unique programming functions and how to configure them. You can use that power now. What's the benefit of that to you? From our perspective, it'll help you to win more bids and build customer loyalty, because high security operators do far more as a consequence of their controllers than any other operator on the market. There's some things that other operators can do maybe a little bit better than high securities in some cases. The one thing that we have that's far more beneficial from our operators than anybody else's operators is the power of the control board, that functionality that it gives you that nobody else can give you. So a quick plug, what you can see here today, what you will see here today, will soon be replaced by operators that exceed your wildest dreams. I'm not at liberty to dive into that now. It's a little bit early here this morning. Except to say that if you hitch your wagon to high security, you could and should expect more. So let me introduce to you today's host, Daniel Butler, who's been with high security for how many years, Daniel?
Nearly 6 years now.
Nearly 6 years, and he's trained more than 1,000 installers, end users, and distributors at factory and regional events, and today is going to deliver today's webinar. Daniel?
Perfect. Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that. All right, let's get started here. I'm going to click on this first screen here, and you should see some operators coming across your screen there. And these are hydraulic operators. So high security goes back more than 30 years. That green box over that slide driver, right? That's been around a while, and that's one that we're well known for. But all these hydraulic operators, they all share the same board, and it's called the Smart Touch or Smart Touch controller, okay? So here's our hydraulic operators. And those hydraulic operators, we have about 81 models of those, 31 models itself just of the slide driver. In 2009, we introduced the Smart DC electromechanical line, and we have 12 operators there. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it, but all those operators use that Smart DC controller board. So of all our 93 different models of operators, we have 2 boards, the Smart Touch for the hydraulic operators and the Smart DC board for the electromechanical line of Smart DC series. All right, so let's take a closer look at that Smart Touch. Oh, excuse me, I was just reminded we have the first poll, and I'm launching that right now. And so you should see a poll on your screen. We'll give you 15 seconds. All right, we're seeing those results come in right now. And I think I'm going to close the poll. Then I'm going to share that screen with you. There we go. So we have 33% beginners, 50% moderate, and 10% advanced users out there, and some with no experience at all, right? So, okay, let's hide that and let's continue on. All right. On your screen now, you're seeing what comprises the Smart Touch controller system. It's the main board there on the left, what we call the Smart Touch controller. Just to the right of that is the power supply board and the keypad display. And those are equivalent to this board. And the Smart DC, which came out in 2009, by the way, if I didn't say that, that Smart Touch controller was first introduced about 2001, 2002 timeframe, and it's updated in 2006. 2009, we came out with the Smart DC controller. You can see all those things on the left, which is the power supply board, the COM terminals, and the keypad display are integrated into that new Smart DC controller. Let's take a closer look at that Smart Touch hydraulic system, okay? So here we go. There's that power supply board. The thing to note on that is we have the 8 COM terminals on the right here. So when you're plugging in your peripherals or your access control devices, usually it's a 2-wire, a COM, and the other end connected to an input of some sort. Here we have the COM terminals that all bus together. Up at the top there, in our 3 24-volt DC spade terminals. So a lot of our devices require a 24-volt DC power feed, and that's where you can get them from. Here's the HyNet display and keypad. That's an OLED display, 16 characters, 2 lines. We have a couple status LEDs there, and we have 5 dual function keys, right? Dual function means that in run mode, I press open, it opens the gate, press close, it closes the gate. But if I press that little menu key, then which is in white, you see the white letters there, then the keys are in a different mode, right? Previous, next, and select. So that's it for the keypad, and now here's that Smart Touch controller, and we're going to look a little bit closer at that Smart Touch controller itself. All right, on the left, you see 24 screw terminals there. Those are the inputs. Some of the open, close, stop, obvious, but if you're using box vehicle detectors, you would plug them in there. Also, probably the most important part is starting last year in 2016, there was a change in UL 325, and we started and we incorporated that change by putting on 3 sensor input terminals. They were there before, but we relabeled those. So the former edge is now sensor 1, eye open and eye close, or sensor 2 and sensor 3. So you can hook up. We used to have where you could hook up. You had to hit the edge to the edge and the eyes to the eyes. Now just connect it to any sensor and you define it in the software. Those are the input terminals. On the right side, that's where we plug in our vehicle detectors, our HY5. Oh, is that a typo? No, that's right. We have a new one called 5B, right? So we've had the HY5As out there. We just launched in the beginning of June our new HY5B. We'll talk a little bit more about that coming up. All right, so at the bottom there, we have dual gate terminals. Dual gate we define as either biparting gates or sequence gates or Sally port. Those are the 3 dual gate functionalities. Easy to do, run a 3-wire cable between 2 operators, go into the installer menu and define them, and that's all you need to do. Piece of cake. Radio options for radio controls at the bottom. And another powerful thing of our board, we have onboard relays. We have 2 of them here, 2 of the electromechanical relays, relay 1 and 2, and then we have a 3rd relay, a user relay, a solid state relay. So that allows us to do things like, oh, on this event, we can do that, right? So maybe I want a light to turn on, or audible alarm, or send an alert forward. That's what we can use those relays for. RS-45, here's the communication ports on our board. RS-45, today we have a, speaking of relays, I'd mentioned 3 on board, but I also have something called a Hi8 relay. So if you need more than 3 on board this Smart Touch controller, we can give you a Hi8 relay that has an additional 8 relays, upping up to a total of 11 relays that we support on this Smart Touch controller. But if you use the Hi8 relay in some other devices like a HyNet adapter, which I'll talk more about, we plug those into those RS-45 ports, and we can daisy chain it from one operator to the other. RS-232, if you're familiar with using our START software, we have a special cable. That's what we'll use that RS-232 port for. Again, that's not a biggie. It's not. We just use that for our classic board to upload software. Let's keep going here. Coin battery, date and timestamp. Most of you are probably aware that we keep 320 events on our board in non-volatile memory. We date and timestamp those. So there's a coin battery. The whole function of that little 3-volt coin battery is just to keep the date and time stamp accurate, right? If it goes out, it doesn't affect the running of the operator in any ways. It's just it's not going to timestamp your event logs properly. So replace it. All right, and the last thing here on this is a status LED. This really is a diagnostic aid. If you go up to the board and that status LED is a heartbeat, steady pulsing of that on off, right? If it's doing something different than that, let's say a long off, on, and then 2 short offs or something, it's not that regular heartbeat, call tech support. They'll help you out with that, all right? All right, so shifting gears. So you can see the power of the Smart Touch controller with a lot of connectivity options on it, from obviously our own vehicle detectors, but also box detectors, to communication devices, to just about anything that you can think of we can attach to this board, all right? So shifting gears here, we're now looking at the Smart DC controller. This is the board that's in all the Smart DC, 24-volt DC electromechanical operators that came out in 2009. Let's take a closer look there. Same thing, we have 24 terminal screw inputs on the left side, but those top 8 are the COM terminals. That's equivalent to those 8 COM terminals on the Smart Touch controller power supply board, right, that we just saw in the previous slide. Same functionalities, open, close, stop, box loop detectors, and again, most importantly, the monitored external entrapment devices that would connect to sensor 1, 2, or 3. Just a quick little thing, when you're connecting those sensors, make sure you connect those sensor comms to the sensor comm on the board, not to the comm bus up at the top, all right? So, all right, so again, on the right side, we have the HY5B vehicle detector sockets to plug them in. You can see starting from the top, it's an exit loop, inside obstruction, outside obstruction, and the center loop. Same thing is on our Smart Touch controller. We have those dual gate connectors at the bottom. So you can connect a Smart Touch controller to a Smart DC controller operator, depending on if it's a biparting or a sequence gated or Sally port situation. I think that the key thing to make sure is that the software versions are the same on both operators as you do that. Again, same radio controls at the bottom of this board. You should see a similarity in the layout of the boards, so it makes it easy for you to know where certain things are located, right? And on board is the same 16-character 2-line display. This is an LCD display. The one on the Smart Touch controller that just came out in the past year or so, we upgraded it from a 4-character LCD to a 16 2-line character OLED display, vibrant, and so that we did with the Smart Touch system. On this one, this has got the 16-character 2-line LCD display, all right? And there's the same keypads, the same keypad with the 5 keys, the same functionality. They're all labeled the same. So if you know how to enter the user menu or installer menu on a Smart Touch controller, it's the same on the Smart DC controller. And this is huge. You know, we're always having to learn new things these days. A new version of Office comes out. Yes, I'm sorry. Oh, keep talking. All right. All right, sorry. A little interruption there. We're always having to learn new things, but when we put out a new operator, even though it's got, let's say we release one tomorrow, and it's using a Smart Touch controller or a Smart DC controller, the thing that you're going to know how to do with this operator is how to interact and go into user installer menu, because it's all the same, which I feel is huge. All right, so there it is, the 5 keys, the display. And just like on the Smart Touch controller, the Smart DC controller has onboard user relays. The Smart Touch had 2. Here we have the Smart Touch has 3, and here we have 2. All right, so moving on. There's 45 ports. I went quickly through that, but I wanted to point out there is a USB port on that, and that's where we plug in a USB cable to interact with our START software. We have the motor and drive controls on this board. Here's actually it should be here, the motor, and here's the MOSFETs. These things generate a lot of heat as we're pumping some current through this board to drive the motors, and so that's a big heat sink. That's not a handle on top. 35 amp fuse. Cruising along here. Here's our 24-volt. We have 2 24-volt DC taps and 12-volt DC taps right on the board. And there's that same coin battery for date and time stamping, and the status LED, the heartbeats, just like I mentioned on the Smart Touch controller. So there's the hardware. So we only have 2 boards for 93 different operator models, but probably the most common is the software. We have 2 pieces of software that are available for free, downloadable from our website, www.HySecurity.com. One is Start. Start is the application software. So it's a Windows-based application. You download it, install it on your Windows-based PC, and then using the right cable, you connect your PC to either the Smart Touch controller or the Smart DC controller, and that allows you to do the functionalities that you see here on the Start menu, which is upload software. So if you want to upload the software to your gate operator, this is how you do it with the Start application. If you want to view the history log, I mentioned this, but we keep 320 history log entries in non-volatile memory, and so we can view those. That's how you view the whole history log. I'll show you a way that we can view it right on your operator here in a little bit here too. This is how you enter the operator menu settings for the different menu items available in the user and installer menu. In a graphical user interface, you can see them all at once here in your operator menu settings. And you can also perform some diagnostics. Here's the version. So as I mentioned, we have two forms of a software up there. One is the Start application. Here's the operator software, and here's the versions. All right. So let's look at some of the applications of this. So what's important? We have a gate, we have a perimeter, we have an opening, an access control point, and really the whole idea is to make that secure, right? Safety is a good thing too. We don't want anyone hurting our gate systems, but the whole thing is security. So maybe you want to have some applications or some settings that help you determine if something is going on at that gate system. For example, maybe someone is trying to force that gate open. So one of our settings that we have that's in the user menu is called the Force Open Alert, FA. You enable this, and so that if the gate comes off that close limit, it's going to beep at you. Everyone is probably familiar with that warn before operator, those 3 beeps that happen, and then it's going to try and close that gate again. If it's not closed within about 4 seconds, then the motor turns off and the buzzer sounds for 30 seconds. That's pretty audible indication that something is going on. We can also send that Alert 1 forced open forward. So if you have a security management package that you want to send this forward to, or maybe you have another means of doing that, maybe you have something connected to your network there, such as maybe our HyNet gateway. We'll talk a little bit about that coming up. So this is the forced open alert. Here's another one. Maybe you'll set some settings that you want to know that the gate has been left open too long. We had one situation where one of our customers, they went to one of their sites and the gate was wide open. They weren't familiar with that, or they weren't aware of that. That's a major security breach there. So what they ended up doing, in this case, I mentioned it earlier, they installed something that one of our new products called the HyNet gateway. HyNet gateway allows you to put your gate operator on a TCP/IP Ethernet network, and all these alerts and errors and faults can be forwarded to you as a text. So that's pretty cool, right? So from a remote site, you can see what's going on at that gate operator. So here it is, open too long. You can see the different settings here, and the user relay option number 8. And I shown you all those user relays that are on the Smart Touch controller and the Smart DC controller board. We have 32 options in those user relays. So we can say if something's on the open limit, do this. If it's on the closed limit, do this. Or if something sends this alert forward, turn on this beacon or turn on this audible alarms. So very powerful system that's all tied together, giving you lots of information on what's going on in your gate operator system.
So Daniel.
Yes.
Why would a gate be open too long? What condition would cause that to happen?
Well, maybe something is on one of your peripheral devices that's causing. Maybe it's on a loop, or maybe the gate operator is having a problem. There's some hardware issue, or there's a roller that's stuck or something, so it can't close that gate. There's multiple reasons, but it's good for you to be able to know that that's happening, right?
Okay, great.
All right, here's another one. Vehicle loitering alert, LT. This is so someone, let's say it's 2 in the morning, and a vehicle pulls up outside, and it's sitting on that outside obstruction loop, and it's kind of casing the joint, kind of seeing what's going on there. Let's say you don't have a guard at this gate, so they're able to hang out there. Well, you might want to know about that, right? So we can send forward a loitering alert and we trip another relay option, option 13, and we can tell you that someone's hanging out at that gate. That's probably something you want to know about, right? So another monitoring and breach reporting method here. And what's big in more, let's say if you have an enterprise and you have a perimeter around your campus there, and cars are coming into the system and everyone has to badge in, well, they don't want people to tailgate, right? So we have a thing called detector logic, and that ties in with our close timer feature. First of all, let me back up just for a second. How do you close the gate, right? If it's a barrier arm, usually there's a reset loop right under that barrier arm, a closed loop, V-loop, whatever you want to call it. So when the car passes past the barrier arm, that it closes the gate. In a slide or swing gate, how do we do that? Well, you could have your access control send a close command, I guess, but more typically we see a close timer set, right? The close timer is the value that says the default is set for 0, which means it's disabled. But here on the right side of the screen, you can see that it's going from 1 to 99 seconds. You can set that close timer for, and that works in conjunction with the detector logic. So the standard or the default setting for the detector logic is 1, which means once the vehicle passes through and it's on that first outside obstruction loop, and you see that here, I show a vehicle sitting on that outside obstruction loop. It resets the timer starts counting down. The car passes through, it crosses both those loops, and once it's free of the loops, the close timer counts down. And that closes the gate. DL2, the second mode, DL equals 2, as soon as the gate hits its open limit, the close timer starts counting down. So it's not waiting for that gate to hit the open limit before it starts counting down. It counts down once the gate is on that open limit, right? So that's a little bit faster. So you can see there's the standard DL1, DL2 is fast, and DL3 is faster because now once the car bridges the outside and the inside obstruction loops, the close timer is reset to 0, and when all those loops are clear, then the gate closes. So we're not waiting for the close timer to count down. It closes them quicker. So that's faster. Then the final and the fastest mode is where, the car is bridging those outside and inside obstruction loops. But once that happens, the gate stops. So the gate doesn't have to fully get to its open limit, right? So, and then once the car passes the loops, then the gate closes. So that's the fastest method, all right? And if there is a car tailgating, and we can also send an alert forward. So relay logic, we have an unauthorized vehicle entry alert, which is in one of our user relay settings. That's setting 11, and we can send that alert forward. Really easy to wire these, whether it's a beacon or an audible alarm, into these relays. Typically, you're going to have a 2-wire connection. One is going to go to the COM terminal on our relays, and the other one is going to go to the normally open connection on that relay. Right? All right, so one of the most important things about counting and tailgating and all that is to be able to detect what types of vehicles are crossing your loops. I had mentioned earlier that we have an HY5B vehicle detector, just came out, and here's some of the features of that HY5B vehicle detector. It's automatic sensitivity adjustment. On the HY5A, we had a little dial there that you could set that. There's no dial here. It's auto sensitivity. You can override that in the software, in the in the operator software. You can do a manual adjustment, but automatic sensitivity adjustment works fine. We can better detect motorcycles if we enable something called motorcycle mode, and we compensate for the gate, right? That's something that conducts and is picked up our vehicle detectors, the loops. Also, improved lightning immunity. Sometimes if on some detectors, you get lightning strikes, it opens the gate, right? So our 5B, we've done some better filtering in there, software filters for lightning suppression. We also, if you look on that, here's a little view of that HY5B right next to where you plug in your loop wires. And oh, by the way, those are toolless connectors there. No screw terminals. You just push in that little push button, put in your 2-wire loops, and right next to that is a little ground terminal. So if you run a wire down from that ground down to your ground lug, it'll send that electricity down into the ground, right? And then there's also an LED indicator on when the traffic is passing through there. Pardon me? Okay. And we've got improved loop diagnostics. I show you these 2 graphs for a specific reason. The way that this new HY5B loop detector works, it can discern between different types of cars, a car versus a truck versus a motorcycle. That's why I'm showing these. I'm not going to drill down on these graphs because that's probably beyond the scope of this. But if you look at the one on the left, it shows tailgating. We have these twin peaks going on, but it's determining between car 1 and car 2. So it shows the improved sensitivity of this loop detector into better discerning between tailgating of cars. We have another poll coming here. Great. Are we ready for that? All right, so let me see where that's at here on my screen. All right, so we've just launched that poll. We're giving you about 15 seconds here to look at this one as well. I'll give you a few for you to answer. Okay, I'm going to close that poll. I'm going to show you the results. And there, you should be able to see them there. I'm going to hide that. All right, we have 3 screens left, and these are quick usage tips, okay? So you're probably aware that we have two menus on board, our Smart Touch and Smart DC controller systems, and the user menu and installer menu. To get in the to access the user menu, you press that menu key 2 times. The reason we say 2 times, if you pressed it once, that's what it shows on this slide, it's going to scroll information that's visible in that display, right? So it's going to talk about build year. Build year is a parameter that we set up last year to accommodate the UL 325 2016 normally closed method that we're using on our boards. Dual gate, it'll tell you if it's a dual gate or sequence gate. Operator type, remember I said we only have 1 board. How do we know which board is which operator is taking advantage of that board? It's an operator type setting. Here's handing, right? Which side of the road is your operator on, left or right? UL 325 usage classifications. That you can see that in the scroll. And cycle counts. What's a cycle? It's a complete open and close. Partials are not cycles. So if you're looking at doing PM and you've got a maintenance contract with someone, and you say on X amount of cycles we're going to come out and do a PM. That's a quick way of checking your cycle count there. There's the close timer setting. The close timer setting, if you press that menu key 2 times, you won't see the scroll. You'll just see close timer. You know you're in the user menu. All right. A couple more usage tips. If you just press the reset key once, it'll chirp at you, and you watch the display, it'll say HySecurity 455. That's a quick way of checking what version of software is on your gate operator. A cold reset. If you press and hold that reset key for 5 seconds, that clears all the adaptive data. That's data that we collect to make decisions on, how long is the gate open, different things like that, IES trips, all that. That clears that adaptive data. So a good way of resetting your machine is to press and hold that for 5 seconds if you're having if that's what you would like to do. This even clears out more data than a power off and on will do, okay? So that's a good thing to know. Check date and time. If you press and hold that stop key, if you watch the display, it'll say HySecurity, and it'll give you the date and time. This is kind of an interesting one. On the Smart DC, in cold temperatures, that's an LCD display, and the contrast will change. Say it's very cold, and you walk up to the gate operator, and that display is blank. Well, how do you interact with it when you can't even see what's on that display? You can press the menu key 1 time, so now it's in the scroll mode, okay? So it's scrolling things, but you're not being able to see them, right? Because you can't see that display. Then press the previous or next key, and that's going to increase the contrast. So if you can't see something on that, again, press the menu key 1 time. It should be scrolling, and then press the previous or next key, and that's going to increase the LCD contrast so you can view that display. The final thing I have here is one of the main reasons for using a laptop with the Smart Start software is to be able to look at the history or event history log that we store on that Smart Touch or Smart DC controller. A couple of iterations ago in the gate operator software, our software engineers updated that and made it where you could view that event history log in the display 1 line at a time. So to do that, you press the menu key 2 times. You press it 2 times, so we're in the user menu, and then you're going to look for it, so either go previous or next. But if you do previous 2 times, you'll see this setting called LG, and this is exactly what shows. LG is 0, which means it's off. So to change any of our settings, you press the select key. Those first 2 letters, LG, will flash. Then you hit the previous or next key to change it from 0 to 1. Once you've got it to the setting you want, which would be 1 in this case, you press that select key again, stops flashing, and then if you watch the display, right in the display, you'll see the first line, the top of the event history log. So at the very top is the most current. We stored 320 entries, And as you go next, then it's going to be looking at the event that happened right before that one, and you're going to step down through that. If you want to go faster through that, press and hold those previous and next keys. They'll fast forward or fast reverse. That's it.
So Daniel, would you show them how to get into the installer menu?
Sure. Okay, installer menu. Like you cannot go directly to the installer menu. To access the installer menu, you have to first go through the user menu. So again, if I'm going to press that menu key 2 times, you're going to see close timer in the display. That's just a confirmation you are now in the user menu. Then from there, you're going to press 2 keys at the same time, the open and reset. These upper 2 keys, in the case of the smart DC controllers, the outermost 2 keys, the open and reset. Press those simultaneous, let go, and it'll change from close timer to something like UC1, or it could be a different setting, but now you're in the installer menu. Thank you for asking that.
You betcha. And what's the difference between the installer menu and the user menu?
Well, the user menu are things that you would want your end user to be able to change, right? Maybe they want to say, oh, I want the gate to close quicker than 4 or 5 seconds. Maybe I want to close at 10 seconds. Well, those are things that we put in the user menu. But certain things that the installer sets up at installation time, we put those in the installer menu, right? Your loop information, all that kind of stuff, right? Yes. Oh, and we have one more poll here that I'm going to launch here. All right, you've got another 15 seconds here. And this one is based around whether you take a laptop with you out to the site. All right, so we've got 15 seconds. I'm going to close that poll. I'm going to share that information with you. Okay, this is interesting. All right, thank you for that poll.
All right, I think we've got a couple questions coming in.
Oh, wait, no, Richard, I have one. No, that is it. I'm done. You're right.
We have a few questions that have come in. Please, if you have other questions, we've probably got time for maybe 4 or 5. First question. What's the coolest, weirdest controller function that you've seen in the field?
Thinking back here, it was in the Sheikh's residence in Abu Dhabi. This goes back a few years, but when the Sheikh left his house and he wanted to go down the road, he didn't want any other traffic on there. So at an intersection, they set up a 4-way sally port. So using our onboard relays, and this shows again the power of that Smart Touch controller, that we have everything necessary there for you to set that up. So I guess a 4-way sally port. Yes.
Cool. Okay, so you said something about getting false alerts and errors texted to them. How do we do that?
Well, that's an interesting question, because last year we launched something called the HyNet Gateway. The HyNet Gateway is a device that connects to your gate operator, and it allows you to remotely monitor and control that gate operator, up to 4 operators per HyNet Gateway. It's basically a switch, a very powerful switch, and which allows you to put your gate operator on a TCP/IP Ethernet network. So now we can send all those alerts to you via text. This is very powerful, very cool.
Great. So Daniel, when is that new operator that you guys talked about going to be available?
Oh, we have a new operator coming, Richard? Yes, of course.
New operator line, actually.
Yes, you will keep in mind the Smart Touch controller, Smart DC controller, that whole architecture came out just after 2000, right? So that's been about 17 years. We've constantly are in R&D mode, if you will, for not only supporting our new products, enhancing, making them better, but also looking ahead. For the last year, we've been in development mode for our next line of what we're calling the next gen. We don't have a name yet because we're still in development. We're looking at some very cool things. So expect something next year, sometime 2018. You should see some new stuff coming out. Oh, and speaking of new stuff, remember when I showed you that Start software? I said Windows-based. Well, what are you guys are all asking for? A smartphone app, right? So next year too, Start, being able to configure, look at your gate operator through your smartphone.
Okay, I think this is the last question, unless somebody pops one up. When's your next technical training scheduled, and where is it scheduled for?
Okay, the next one, we call these the RTTSs. We used to always have factory training here, but we had a lot of requests to bring it out to our customers. So a few years ago, we started launching what we call the Regional Tech Training Seminar Series, and the next one coming up it's going to follow as is in Dallas. So that's the first week in October in Dallas, Texas.
Okay, well, actually, a couple more questions just came in. Is there an app interface for the HyNet?
Yes. Well, no. Excuse me. It's a browser based. The HyNet is for you have installed routers at home. A lot of people have home networks. So how do you install? How do you configure your router? Usually there's an embedded web server. This is the same thing with the HyNet. It's an embedded web server. So there's some default TCP/IP addresses that ship with this product. You just bring up your browser and you point to those addresses, and in your browser, which is a graphical user interface, that's where you configure it. But stay tuned, an app is coming as well.
Okay. Last question. Is the HY5B available now? What's the pricing difference from the HY5A?
Yes, we started shipping that at the beginning of this month, HY5Bs, and you know, it's more powerful. It does all this automatic stuff that you don't even have to think about. It's a really kind of a plug and play for you, and it's even cheaper. So I'm not sure the price of it, but I know it's cheaper than the HY5As. $5 cheaper is what you're telling me, Fred. So it's $5 cheaper. Yes.
Cool. So better vehicle detector and less money.
Better price performance.
Dynamite. So thanks everybody for attending. You're going to end with a survey. Hopefully you'll take just a couple more minutes. I think it's a very short survey that we'd like you to fill out to make these even better than they've been so far. Let us know what you think. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you, guys and gals.